FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
Welcome. You are listening to the Financial Survival Network. I'm Kerry Lutz, and today is, it's May 5th, 2020. We're recording on the 1st, and that's May Day, Law Day. Has a lot of connotations, as you know, but the country is in tough straits right now. You might argue a lot of it is self-inflicted, and I couldn't agree with you more, but nonetheless, doesn't change the situation you're in. Got to get through it. And how do you get through it? Well, I think you can learn a lot from the military, the way they handle things. Military specializes in adverse situations, to say the least. And I'm curious to find out how you're getting through the pandemic, what you're doing to survive. So why don't you send us an email? It's kl@kerrylutz.com, kl@kerrylutz.com. Really pleased to have John Foley with us now. And John, you interesting life story. You're a Blue Angel, and you've basically become a leader. And there's a lot of things in your experience, I would assume, that can help you get through what we're going through now as a nation. So I'd like to kind of talk about that. We appreciate your coming on. So as you say here, we believe that transcendent potential for performance lives within every individual and organization. So how do you tap on that now? How do you tap into that transcendent potential to not just survive, but actually wind up prospering from the current hard times?
Yeah, absolutely, Kerry. Well, first off, I'm glad to be here. And those words meant something very special to me when I was a Blue Angel, but they actually mean more to me today. And I guarantee by the end of this interview, your audience will all have a deeper and richer appreciation for what those words mean, because that is the key to tapping into your your potential, right? And what it is basically waking up gratitude. It's this deep gratitude. And when I used to fly with the Blue Angels, we would always brief and debrief, right? And it wasn't just the Blue Angels in the military. Also, I did flew jets off aircraft carriers, happened to fly in the movie Top Gun, all kinds of interesting stuff. But the key is you got to have a process and a mindset, and they both need to come together. We know this in business. We know this in life. But most people, we start with the process. We start trying to fix things with the how. And I try to look at the why first, and I look at the mindset first. So very quickly, glad to be here is a mindset where what we want to do is we want to actually tap into in all these challenging situations. Yes, the market's crazy. Yes, there's fear out there, right? What we want to do is first become strong inside, in our inner potential first, get our self-focused. And I start that with gratitude, and happy to go over some techniques on how to do that.
All right. So gratitude always is very important in any undertaking you do, because regardless how bad things are, they could certainly be worse, and there are always things to be thankful for. So tell us your take on the gratitude equation here.
Yeah. Well, I do this every morning, and I did it right before this interview. And I say anybody on here can try this too. Very first thing I've done is train myself to wake up happy, and that's a really good thing in this time frame, right? And the way you do that is the very first thing I do when I wake up is I just say, what am I grateful for in the present moment? So boom, today I thought of you. I said your audience. I said, I get the rare privilege share some information with others and hopefully help them, right? Bam. But here's what you do. It doesn't, also. I'm healthy, I'm strong. Not everybody is right now, right? So I'm looking about, what can I be grateful for in the present moment? But then here's what you do. You go back 24 hours. Just go back to yesterday and say, what happened yesterday? And think about somebody. I like to think about faces. Maybe somebody you were able to support. Maybe a smile on a child's face. The point is connecting to something that you feel, not just you think, right? Then go forward in your day and think about others, not just yourself. If you do this, what happens is it changes the neuroplasticity in your brain, right? And what happens is you can start to get clearer thoughts. So that clarity, not just gratitude, but that clarity is what we need to get through the day. So it's a start on how to center yourself.
All right. So I get that. And so you're going to be a happier person the more grateful you are, right? And the more focused you are on the good things in life rather than the negative things, right?
Well, yes, but here's what's interesting. When you're in a grateful state of mind, it opens up the area of your brain where perceptions come from. So it's the same area, right? Mm-hmm. So what happens is you start to see things others don't see. Key in financial markets, key in the world, right? Can I see things others aren't seeing before they happen? So your awareness expands, right? Now, here's the other good part. When you're in a generous state of mind, okay, and we have a Glad to Be Here Foundation. We give 10% of all our fees to charity. We've helped out over 382 charities, especially right now. When you're in that generous state of mind, it opens up the area of your brain where self-esteem comes from, where confidence comes from. And a lot of us can use a little more confidence right now with the challenges out there, right? But the cool part is if you combine those two, you'll see things others don't see and you'll have the confidence to take the action. That's innovation. That's creativity. That's what's going to get you out of this situation stronger than when we're going in.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I could see that. So the gratitude it all starts with gratitude then effectively, right?
Yeah, it's incredible. You know, I mean, I could have jumped into all the processes and systems. I'm happy to talk to you about how we did it in the Blue Angels, which is an elite team, right? And we can go there. But it starts with gratitude. It starts with joy. It starts with glad to be here. When that becomes your ethos in life, it opens up all these other possibilities. Now, it's not enough. I'm not saying just walking around being a grateful person is going to be enough. You also need a process and a framework to take you to where you're trying to go. I like to say the high performance zone is simply the gap between where you are and where you want to go. And a lot of us aren't even sure where we want to go. That's the other idea. What's the clarity of where you're trying to go? You know where you are pretty clearly, right? So the real question is, how do you close that gap?
Yeah, well, you know what they say, if you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there, right?
Exactly. No, exactly. And it's hard. Believe me, I do this all the time too. Can you get down what you're trying to achieve, whether it's professionally, whether it's personally, whether it's in health, there's different elements of our life, right? Down to one sentence. And if you can get that clarity, and then I've got a process that'll close that performance gap, but it's getting that clarity first.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes quite a bit of sense. So you got to start with clarity before first and foremost, right?
Yep. Clarity and gratefulness will give you that clarity. That's that glad to be here mindset. I'll give you a quick example. So when I showed up to the Blues, and I had already flown jets off aircraft carriers, like I said, we happened to be out there on the Enterprise when we filmed the movie Top Gun, became an instructor pilot. And that's kind of the pecking order to become a Blue Angel. But when I got into that jet the first time as a Blue Angel, and it was in the back seat because they were giving me a ride. We have a number 7 jet. It's a 2-seater. And all of a sudden we taxi out on the runway, and we're taxiing out with 4 jets onto the runway for takeoff at the same time. All of a sudden, our wings are overlapped. The boss says, run them up. That's where you take the throttles. You go to full military power, right? That's right. About 128,000 pounds of thrust. Airplane shaking. And then he goes, off brakes now, burners ready now. You slam it into full afterburner. The jets, they leap off the runway. Now remember, I'm not flying. I'm a pilot. I can do all this, but not at this level, right? All of a sudden, the pilot does this violent left wing down. We go slicing underneath the wingtip of the number 2 jet. Next thing I know, we're tucked in underneath these afterburners. And I don't know if you've ever seen the Blue Angels fly, but I mean, the flames are coming out, the airplane's shaking, there's metal all around me. These guys start going straight up. And the thought that hit me that second, Terry, was, how am I going to do this?
Yeah.
How am I going to do this? Because what they were doing, what they were showing me was they were saying, John Foley, Gucci, which is my call sign. They're saying, Gucci, you want to play in this game? You got to raise your performance 300%. And guess what? We've only got 90 days to do it. That's a shock. But you know what? Having been put through that process, there I was 3 months later, upside down, 36 inches from another jet. It can be done. And the cool part is I've tried to unpack in the last 2 decades how to transfer that into financial, personal, business gains.
Mm-hmm. So what's the key here? How do we do it?
Okay. Well, it starts with beliefs. All right. I call it the high performance framework, and it starts with beliefs. You all know that the classic strategic management theory: vision, plan, execute, feedback loop. Okay, we all know that. What's the vision? Come up with a plan, execute on a plan. Hopefully, you have a feedback loop. Typically, the weakest point on most people, right? So, but see, all that'll do is get you to the next level. It won't take you to this elite level because it's really not about vision. What it is about is beliefs. All right. And it's that clarity and beliefs. And basically, we all get stuck in the 2 areas, either limiting or liberating beliefs. The way I define those 2 is very simply: a limiting belief is going to hold you back. It's going to cause you stuckness. And you watch, they're fear-based. And you can see them today incredibly well, right? So we gravitate. We're typically we're wired to focus on fear. All right. You got to change that. And you got to get to what I call limiting beliefs or liberating beliefs, which are more opportunity based. It's the ability to see a glass as half full, not half empty. And the way you do that is with this technique where I call being scared, but not afraid. Okay. Yeah. And there's a subtle difference here. This is what's critical. And it's critical right now today because the markets are changing. There's a lot of things going on. There's a lot of fear with the virus. Okay. I get that. Right. So scared says, all right, I'm aware. Scared's awareness. Scared says, hey, maybe I won't walk down a dark alley late at night. Scared says, maybe I should comply with the PPE protections, social distancing, whatever, right? Be aware of what's going on. But your little hairs are still standing up. And it's like landing a jet on the back of an aircraft carrier at night. You got to be totally focused and aware that, yes, this is dangerous, but I can control what I can control, which is my own emotions, number one, and that's what gets in the way of most people, right? So the idea of just being awareness, I call it situational awareness of what's going on, but not being trapped with fear. That in itself, that's just the starting point, by the way. But that in itself, right now today, is the biggest differentiator on people who are actually accelerating out of this and using this. And like we are, we're pivoting our whole business into digital right now, and it's working. But I was able, you have to get over that fear.
Yep. I totally get what you're saying. So you can't let fear be your guide, right? You have to use that fear and transcend it effectively. And I think everyone knows that, but how do you actually do it?
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next.
Financial Survival Network is brought to you today by Orin Resources, a junior exploration company with the appetite of a major. It's hot on the trail of the next globally significant discovery, creating enormous potential upside for you, the shareholder. Orin is one of the most aggressive exploration companies pursuing high-grade, scalable gold and copper deposits and has a premier 7-project portfolio, including its 2 flagships, Committee Bay in the Arctic and Sombrero in Peru. Orin's unparalleled technical team and highly experienced management has a history of success in advancing and monetizing exploration assets. No wonder Orin's been called one of the best in the junior exploration sector. Orin trades on the TSX and the NYSE under AUG. To learn more, go to orinresources.com. That's AURYN resources.com.
The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
Yeah, good. Okay. So the first thing is the idea of setting that clarity, which I told you about gratitude will help you start to get that clarity. But then you got to have a process, right? So the second step is all about preparation, and it's all about focus. And so the key there is that what I do every morning, and I do this with my teams, and those of you who are listening, I'm sure do this too. We have check-in and briefing calls, right? And right now we're doing it via Zoom. Okay, great. All right. But normally you try to get the team together. And before we go flying, what we used to do is we brief. Okay. Now the brief is important, but it's not about planning at this point. See, what it is about preparation and focus. It's getting your mind and your team aligned. So first thing I need to focus is my own state of mind. All right. And I've got a practice. We can talk about it here in a little bit if you want, how to focus yourself, get you into this high state of readiness. Right. But then you got to get the team aligned. And I do that with what I call a center point. Right. And what's that? There was this maneuver that we had on the Blue Angels. We, whenever we did an air show, we always had a center point, which is a single point of focus that we're going to make decisions off of, right? So be a tractor trailer truck over land and be a boat over water, right? And we're able to make decisions. So as we're coming at each other at 1,000 miles per hour closure, by the way, it's a mile every 4.5 seconds. I got 6 teammates coming all different directions. Right? I've got to be able to adjust because we're in a constant state of adjustment, just like we are in business and life, right? It's not like, oh, you got a plan and let's just do it. No, you're constantly adjusting. But you got to have a center point that you know you're making your adjustments on. And that could be your core values. You know, when I speak to companies, I've spoken to over 1,000 organizations now all around the world. What's the center point? Usually the customer is a good starting point, or the client, right? And then what you do is you build the stack around that allows you to align to what they need. So those are just the first 3 steps.
Gotcha. All right. So you got this process, and then you obviously need to review, right? You have a feedback loop, if it were.
That's it. See, I'm glad you went to the most important part because everybody's really doing the first part, at least we're aware of it. Then what you need to do before you actually do the debrief is you have to build high trust contracts. So it's all about trust, right? And so you build these high trust contracts amongst yourself, who you're working with, your teammates, your customers. And these are both verbal and nonverbal. These are not the written contracts. I get written contracts, right? That's just a starting point. But this is where you build it deeper. You connect, you line, and you commit. And this is the commitment part, right? So another example, when Thumper and I came at each other at that 1,000 miles an hour closure in the Knife Edge Pass, our goal was to cross within a wingspan. If we're 1 second off, we're going to miss by 2 football fields. So this is the precision that we're asking of each other. So how do we do it? We did it with this simple verbal contract. Yeah, we had processes, we had SOP, we had standard operating procedures. But when you're airborne, you got to adjust. So I just told him simply this. I said, Thumper, and that's his call sign. I said, Thumper, I'll be on the flight line. The flight line is the inboard edge of the left painted stripe on the runway. I'll set the altitude. I'll make the timing corrections. I'll give you the command to execute a full stick deflection roll. You, my wingman, have one job. Miss me. That was it.
Yeah, missing you.
It's the biggest game of chicken you ever played, right? But we did that in high trust, and that's the key in the relationships that we have with people.
Yeah. Yep. I gotcha. So
small things matter there. That's the key on trust. Small things matter.
I'm quite sure. Yeah, like a couple of inches could be the difference between life and death when you're flying at each other at 1,000 miles an hour. I can only imagine.
Terry, you'll love this. On one of these, you go by so close, my head would get thumped from the airflow going over his canopy. Okay, I've got video of all this, right, where I'm in the cockpit. And I like to show this on my speeches and stuff. But you can feel that energy. But you asked a really important question. I didn't get to it, so I'll get to it right now. And that is that feedback, that debrief. And I actually call it the Glad to Be Here debrief. This is the one step that'll be the differentiator. Okay. And that is, are you learning? Are you adjusting? And the way we would do this in the Blues is slightly different than the way we would do it in the military, which is very, very important. Okay. But there's a technique item here that changes everything. And that's this Glad to Be Here mindset onto it. So the point is, we debriefed every day after the event. We flew. I do this with business calls. Right after this call, we'll debrief and say, how did it go? And you focus on what went well first. So here's the key on debriefs. Focus on what went well and replicate and repeat what's going well in your life. Okay. Then identify what could have gone better. Okay, great. Once we identify that, the second thing you want to do is say, okay, well, what's the learnings from that? All right. And this is where you open it up to your team. And then you say, what was the decision point that led to that learning? Okay. Now, the way we do that, though, is you got to have 5 dynamics. And this is what's critical to have an effective Glad to Be Here debrief. First thing you need to do is have a safe environment. And by a safe environment, it's where people feel psychologically and physically safe, where they can speak up, they can talk about things. It's respect. All right. So the first dynamic is that safe environment. Second dynamic is check your ego at the door. We know you're good. I know your listeners are good. They wouldn't be here, right? But you got to check your ego at the door. It's about the we, not the I. It's what I call connection and extension of teamwork, right? Then the third one is lay it on the table. Let's be open and honest. Let's talk about things. Now, the fourth is the most critical. And you can look at yourself and you can look at your teams and say, do I really have this? And that is an own it and fix it mentality. This is where accountability comes in. But what I'm really looking for in people when I select people for my team is personal responsibility, way bigger than accountability, right? And then the last one is that Glad to Be Here. And that changes the game, because now you're not in a downward spiral. You're not just talking about what went wrong. You're celebrating your victories. And it was the key to the Blue Angels' success, so that we fly closer together and lower to the ground any other team in the world consistently year after year. It's because we have this process, and the Glad to Be Here is the culture.
All right. Well, really interesting. And I think you can learn a lot from it. It definitely appears to be a transportable skill. And I guess you have to think like a Blue Angel and go from there. Hey, if people want to find out more about you, John, and connect with you on the web, how do you do that? Yeah,
just go to johnfoleyinc.com, johnfoleyinc.com. The book's out called Fearless Success. It's on Amazon, bestseller. It really unpacks a lot of what I'm talking about. So those are 2 good ways. Social, of course, is great. We're totally engaged out there. We're starting what we call the Glad to Be Here movement. And if people want to sign up or engage us, all kinds of great resources free to you to really apply this what I'm talking about. So johnfoleyinc.com, sign up, and we'll get you whatever you want.
All right. And we really appreciate that. There's a link to John Foley Inc. in the show notes. So just click it, take you to John's site, and questions, comments, etc. Email us, kl@kerrylutz.com, Twitter feed @kerrylutz, Facebook page, Financial Survival Network, and of course, our main website, financialsurvivalnetwork.com. John, been a pleasure. Thank you so much. We'll talk to you soon.
Terry, thank you. Thanks, everybody. Glad to be here.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.